Welcome to Cooking on the Kenai. Today I'd like to show you how to make glass candy or suckers. Making candy is a little more precise than other types of cookery, so you have to pay attention to the temperature. On my countertop, you can see that I have all my mise en place ready to go. I have my pans greased for my glass candy, and I have everything out ready to go. In my pan, I have 1 cup of granular sugar. To that, I am going to add a half a cup of water and a 1/3 of a cup of white corn syrup. Corn syrup inhibits crystal growth, so you don't end up with problems in your candies. Bring your sugar, corn syrup, and water to a boil over high heat. Once it reaches a boil, turn your heat down to medium-high and put in your candy thermometer. When making candy, you have to be a little more precise than in other types of cookery. You have to make sure the temperature of the candy syrup is at a certain spot for the type of candy you're making. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You can use glass thermometers like these. This one is totally encased, so it's easy to wash without having to worry about getting water in it. This one has a plastic top on it that has a hole in the top, so you have to be careful and conscious of that when you wash it so that you don't get water inside of there. If you do get water inside of there, you have to wait until that thermometer has completely evaporated the water out of it before you can use it. You can also use a digital thermometer if you have one of those. If you are using these glass candy thermometers, you have to test them in boiling water. I will show you that in a moment. Another method of testing candy syrup is to use the cold water method, where you have a bowl of cold water, very cold water, that you pour some of the candy syrup into, and you test it by hitting it against the side or crumbling it with your fingers. I'm going to show you how to test a thermometer to make sure it's accurate at your elevation. Make sure when you are looking at your thermometer that you know what all the little marks mean so that you understand where your temperature is going to be. I have to boil this for 2 to 3 minutes to make sure it boils at 212 degrees. If it doesn't, I will need to change the temperature that my candy needs to go to the difference whether up or down. I'm going to place my thermometer in my pot of boiling water, and I am going to set it so that my thermometer is not touching the bottom of my pan. If it's touching the bottom of the pan, it's measuring the bottom of the pan and not my syrup. I keep a paper towel handy so that I can wipe the front of my thermometer off. When you are looking at your thermometer, you need to make sure you are close to eye level on your thermometer so that you are reading it accurately and not above where it should be. My thermometer is reading 210 degrees. Because it is reading below 212, which is boiling, I need to increase the temperature of my candy that I'm making 2 degrees. So if on the glass candy we have to go to 285, I have to go to 287. If it read 214 instead of 212, I would have to subtract it and I would have to go 2 degrees lower, so it would be 283 instead of 285. As you can see, my syrup has now come to a boil. So I am going to turn down my heat to medium-high, and I am going to insert my thermometer into my syrup. Remember, to not have it touch the bottom of your pan. I use a wooden spoon to stick underneath the bottom so that I know that I am not touching the bottom of my pan. As you can see, my candy syrup is up to boiling. I had turned down the heat. I have inserted my thermometer. I used my wooden spoon to make sure that my thermometer was not touching the bottom, and I wiped down my thermometer so that I can see where the temperature is. In my little bowl, I have measured a half a teaspoon of candy flavoring. This is concentrated 4 times more than extracts, and so it makes your candy have a very, very good flavor. I added 3 drops of food coloring to my little bowl, and now we just wait and watch the candy thermometer until it comes up to temperature. This will take 3 to 5, possibly 10 minutes, depending on your stove. Pay attention to your syrup as it boils if you are going to do the cold water method of testing. When we first start out, it's pretty thin and it's easy to stir. As it gets higher in temperature, it will get thicker as the water evaporates out of your syrup. Okay, my candy thermometer says I have reached 275 degrees. So I am stirring this, and as you can see, my syrup has gotten a lot thicker. It sticks to my spoon, and you can see the bubbles on the back of the spoon as it's thickened up. So I only have about 10 to 12 degrees more for this to heat, and it goes rather quickly once you hit about 275. I am now up to about 282, so I'm going to take a little bit of my syrup and put it into my very cold water. And as I bring it up, when I hit it against the side, hopefully you can hear that. That means it's very hard. Okay? So I'm going to take my syrup off because it is at my temperature, and I'm going to very carefully put my thermometer into a glass cup because it is extremely hot. To my candy, I'm going to add my flavoring and my coloring. Please do not get this syrup on you. It is very hot and will burn you really fast. So I have added my flavoring. I have it stirred in. I have my greased cookie sheet here, and in order for me to make suckers, because I don't have a mold, I have one of these mini muffin pans, and so I'm just going to pour a little bit of syrup in the bottom of a couple of these to show you how to make suckers if you don't have a sucker mold. I'm going to pour the rest of my syrup out onto my cookie sheet. Spread that out so that it's nice and thin. Doesn't like to spread very well. You can see it's starting to thicken up out on the edges. Now I'm going to let that cool. Immediately upon getting your syrup spread out, you need to put your pan in hot soapy water clear up to the edge so that it will wash out easily. I have stuck a toothpick in the center of my candy over here. I waited a little bit, probably 5 minutes, for my candy to stiffen up before I started adding my toothpicks. I can put one right in the center, and as you can see, it kind of holds onto the stick or onto the toothpick. I didn't have sucker sticks, but you can still use a toothpick or something similar to make your sucker stick. So that works kind of slick. You put that in there and add a couple of supports to the sides, and it works marvelously. Sometimes you have to go back and reposition if it starts to fall over, but as it cools, it will stay where it needs to. Okay, back again. So now I will show you how to cover the glass candy in powdered sugar and to take it out of the pan. Okay, so to put powdered sugar on your glass candy, the first thing you have to do is make sure it's cool enough. So I've got my hand on the bottom of the pan and it's cool enough that way. So then you can pop it off by pushing on the bottom, and as you can see, it just snapped. So now you just need to break it into bite-sized pieces. Some people have luck hitting it. I usually have to put my fingers underneath it and break it into bite-sized pieces. Sometimes it breaks really easily, sometimes it does not, depending on how thick your candy is. Sometimes you have to smack it harder. It's nicer if you can get bigger pieces. So anyway, there went one. Okay, so I'm breaking it, I've broken it up. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to put a little bit of powdered sugar in the bottom of my sieve. I'm going to add my glass candy, that's a little big, to my sieve, a little bit of it. Put a little more powdered sugar over the top and kind of shake that around so that I get each of my pieces of candy coated with the powdered sugar. As you can see, my suckers are ready to go, and so what you can do with those is push on the bottom and they pop right out. And if you're going to store these, you need to coat them in powdered sugar also so that they don't stick together. And you could also put one of those in your candy dish. Store your glass candy in Ziploc baggies to have it last longer. Moisture in the air will cause it to stick together even with the powdered sugar on it. Making glass candy in an afternoon is a fun activity to do. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a nice day.